Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. Time in the WHIP studios is 11:17. Zach Gelb here with you, flying solo on this celebratory Monday. Yes, we know the Eagles stink, but right now the Temple Owls are the hottest team in this town, and they're off to the American Athletic Conference Championship game. And I can't wait to get down to Houston on Friday and broadcast this game on Saturday. We'll come your way right here on Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP, at noon Eastern Time. And now joining us on the hotline is the preeminent football analyst in this town for Comcast Sportsnet and Sports Radio 94 WIP, and a Temple graduate. That is the great Ray Didinger. Ray, Zach Gelb here. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Fine, Zach. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, and we appreciate you coming on today and giving us a few minutes. So right now, Temple football is the best team in this town. We know that you love Temple University and this football team. Being in this town for so long, did you ever think you would see the day when Temple football would be the best team in Philadelphia?
No, honestly, I can't say that I foresaw that, but I'm delighted that it's happened. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing for the university. I think it's a great thing for the city. It's the night when they played Notre Dame down at the Link was a great night. It was a great night to let Philadelphia experience what big time college football is like. But because Philadelphia is a great sports town, we know that, and have had all the professional sports for forever, for all of our lifetimes. But if you're a Philadelphia sports fan, you never really have experienced what big time college football looks like, sounds like, and feels like. But you did that night. If you got down there or you watched it on television, that was a great night of college football. And to see Temple on the big stage with with the heavyweight champion of college football in the University of Notre Dame and playing them right down to the last 2 minutes of the game was very exciting. And now to have them in a position where they're playing for the conference championship and the opportunity to play in a big bowl game, I mean, that's great stuff. So all credit goes to Matt Rhule and his coaching staff and those players for what they've done this year, because it's something that, even a longtime Temple alum and a real loyalist like me, I mean, I can't tell you I ever could have foreseen this day coming.
Yeah, when I was a freshman and this team had 4 wins, and the year after that they have 2 wins, if you would have told me they would be playing for a conference championship game, I would have told you you're crazy. Sure. And really, you sit there, and we talked to so many analysts this year, so many former players that played on that 79 team, or even when there were wins when they only had 1 win a year or 2 wins a year, and we've seen how bad this program has been, and now to see what they're doing, it's really something special. So what was Temple football like when you were here as a student? Because that's something we like to just get the perspective on every time we have someone on talking Temple football.
Oh, sure. Well, it was a whole different level of football then. It was I got there in September of '64, and I was there. I was class of '68, so it was the mid '60s, and the coach was George Macris, and it was good football, but it was not Division I football. I mean, back at that time, Temple was playing Gettysburg and Bucknell and Kings Point, and Delaware was a big game. And I remember one year, I guess it was my senior year, they scheduled Bowling Green, and oh my goodness, that seemed like a huge step up in class. But the team was really good. I mean, I think my senior year they were like 7-2, and they had. They scored 82 points in one game against Bucknell. They had a pretty explosive offense. They had 2 really good quarterbacks, John Waller from Ridley High School and Tommy DeFelice from West Catholic, both local guys, and they kind of alternated on and off. And they had a receiver from Cardinal Doherty named Jimmy Callahan, who scored 6 touchdowns in the game against Bucknell. So they were an exciting team. They were wide open. They threw the ball. They scored a lot of points, and they won a lot of games. And the conference back then was called the MAC, the Middle Atlantic Conference, and they won it one of those years with like a 7-2 record. But again, it's a whole different level of football than what these guys are playing now. And what they're playing, I mean, they're playing with the big boys, and they're more than holding their own.
It was that 67 season where they won the MAC. And now getting back to this group on the field now, everyone talks about if Matt Rhule is going to stay or not with all that national attention that has come. You've been around a lot of college coaches. You've seen a lot of college coaches go different places. Do you think Matt Rhule will stay here at Temple University for a few more years?
Hope so. I mean, I think everybody shares that feeling. He's obviously a really good young coach, and I think that he's ignited something really special on that campus, which is a feeling that football can be relevant at Temple, and it can matter, and students can get behind it, and I think he gives you a kind of credibility that no football coach has really brought to that program in a long time. Al Golden kind of got the program back on its feet, but Matt Rhule has taken it to a whole nother level, and it was inevitable. I mean, everybody knew with his kind of success and what he's done there that other schools were going to come looking for him and talk to him, and he's got to listen. I mean, he owes it to himself and his family to listen to the offers. But I'll tell you, Zach, I've been around the team a little bit this year. I mean, not a whole lot. I mean, at Comcast Sportsnet, we had to do a Notre Dame a pregame and postgame for the Notre Dame game. So I actually went up to the Temple practice one day, and I went to their media day that day, and I just kind of listened to the players, and I listened to Matt, and I just came away with the impression that this guy is very sincere in his affection for the university and his belief in the program and his commitment to the program. I don't get the feeling that he came to this job looking at it as a stepping stone. I don't think he's one of these coaches who's on the make and looking to catch the first train out of town. I think he's really proud of what he's built. I think he's proud of his kids, and he'll listen to other offers. But I don't get the feeling that he's a guy that's, let's say, anxious to bolt. I mean, the university has to make it worth his while to stay. I mean, they have to give him an offer and a contract that's competitive with what he's going to be offered on the outside. But I do think this is a guy that is genuine when he says that he really loves the school and he really loves the program and the support that he's gotten. And I think that all things being equal, I think he's going to stay. I don't think he's a guy that's looking to leave town. Whereas perhaps I always kind of thought that Steve Adazio was. I kind of thought that Adazio really did look at Temple as a stepping stone program, and it may prove to be that for Matt Rhule, but I really don't think that's foremost in his mind. I think he would like to stay here, and I think he knows. Right now the university, I think, has to make it apparent to him that he's that important that they're willing to make the commitment to keep him there long term.
I think you're dead on, and we had Pat Kraft in studio a few weeks ago, the athletic director of this university, and he said Temple's committed to Matt Rhule, so we'll see what comes out of that with this contract. If they give him an extension, bump him up to in the $3 million range or something like that, as Ray Didinger joins us right now from Sports Radio 94 WIP and Comcast Sportsnet. Before we talk about the Eagles, Ray, I just want to get your quick take on Tyler Medikevich. Has 473 tackles. Conjar is the all-time leading tackler at Temple with 492. What kind of player do you think Tyler will be at that next level in the National Football League since he is a senior?
Well, I think he's going to play well. I really do. I look at him as a guy that I don't know how he's going to test out at the combine. When he goes out to the combine and the pro scouts, they put the tape measure on him and they measure him and then they weigh him and then he has to run 40 yards and then he has to run in and out of a lot of cones and that'll go a long way towards helping to form the opinion in the scouting report and the grade that they give him going into the draft. But and that I've always thought it's a little bit silly that they have to do that. I mean, you've had a long time to evaluate this kid. You've got a ton of tape on him. I think everything you need to know about Tyler Medikevich is there on the tape. If you just look at that and you see him play, I mean, you know that this is a kid that's got he's got tremendous instincts. He's got tremendous desire. He's in my view, he's big enough. I mean, he's not 6'5", 245 pounds, but he's big enough. And, I've seen guys that come out of the colleges that are maybe a little less than ideal in terms of the measurables, but they make up for it with just a great desire and great technique. And I think this kid is like that. I'll tell you right now, I had to send in my ballot for the Maxwell Club Awards this year, and he got my first place vote as outstanding defensive player in college football this year. I voted him number one because not just because he's a Temple guy, but because I think he deserves it. I think he's been that good. And I look at some guys that have come out of college in the last few years, and I think this kid has all the ability of, let's say, a Paul Posluszny, who came out of Penn State and was a first-round draft choice and has played well in the NFL. I think that Medikevich is at least that good. So a lot is going to depend on what he does at the combine and how well he tests. I know he's going to interview great. I mean, you're going to immediately know how this football is really important to this kid. And you draft a kid, you're going to draft a kid's a real baller. I think that's going to be obvious to everybody. But I think just on his merits, I mean, I think he should be no worse than a second-round pick, and it wouldn't surprise me if he somehow slipped into the bottom of the first round.
Wow, how about that? And Mike Sarava, who's the linebacker coach here, also got a chance to coach Luke Kuechly at BC. He compared Tyler a lot to Luke Kuechly, so we'll see how he plays out on Sundays later on in the future next year. But let's get to the team that plays on Sundays at the link right now, and that's the Eagles. And we all know they're a mess. They're on a 3-game losing streak, somehow only 1 game out of the NFC East. How much confidence do you have left in Chip Kelly? Because this has just been really brutal to watch these last 3 weeks, Ray.
It has been, and it's been brutal to watch, and it's been pretty disillusioning and discouraging for Eagles fans who started this. I mean, we've all been through bad seasons with the Eagles. That's nothing new if you're a football fan in Philadelphia. But I think this one is particularly cruel because I think it started with such high expectations. I mean, there have been years when the Eagles have been bad, but you knew from the start of training camp they were going to be bad. This is a different kind of year in that it started with extremely high expectations, and it's now turned into something of a disaster. That makes it harder to accept and even harder to explain. But I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, you just look at this team right now. I think they don't have a whole lot of talent. People sometimes talk about, gee, what's happened to this team, and it's almost as if they feel like they've underachieved. But I honestly look at the talent that's on the field, and I just kind of say this is what they are. I just think that they're not a particularly good team, and right now they're obviously going through a stretch where their confidence is shot, and despite what the coaches say, you watch them play and they just aren't giving great effort. I mean, they're just not. They're the worst of all possible worlds right now. They're a not particularly good team that's not playing very hard. And if you put those two together, you're not going to win very many games in the NFL.
You're exactly right. They're a bad football team right now, and these were 3 winnable games going up against the Dolphins, Buccaneers, and Lions, and they didn't even show up for the Bucs game and the Lions game as well. And you talk about that lack of effort. Chip Kelly made a lot of moves this offseason, got the full power as the GM and head coach. Have these players quit on him? Is there any chance that they could save this season and find a way to back into the playoffs?
Oh, sure. I mean, they're 1 game out. I mean, as bad as they've been. And at 4-7, that's bad. They're 1 game out in this woeful division. I mean, we remember what the NFC used to be when that was really the heavyweight division of pro football. And every year the NFC East champion was the team that went on to the Super Bowl and usually crushed whoever came out of the AFC. But those were the days of Parcells and Gibbs and Jimmy Johnson, and we're falling a long way from that. The NFC East right now is really poor, and in spite of themselves, the Eagles find themselves right now just 1 game out. So is it possible? Yeah, I mean, mathematically it's possible, and their last 2 games of the season are against Washington and New York, who are going to be the other 2 teams that are going to be in the running. Could they do it? Yeah, I guess they could do it, but honestly, I mean, I look at the next few games they've got coming up. They've got New England, they've got Buffalo, they've got Arizona, and I'm sure they're going to be underdogs in all of those games. And realistically, the way they're playing right now, especially coming off the 2 performances they've had against Tampa and Detroit, I mean, you can't. I mean, anybody that expects them to get on a run now, I don't think so. I mean, they're 4-7, and in all honesty, they're 4-7, and right now they're probably heading into the toughest part of their schedule. So the idea that could they get there? Because of the math, yeah, you could say they could get there. But realistically, if you just watch the way this team's playing now, I would say no.
Wrapping up with Ray Didinger, joins us from Sports Radio 94 WIP and Comcast Sportsnet. And I haven't been a believer in Chip Kelly ever since the offseason. I wasn't a big fan of the moves that he's made. But even going into the season, I'll admit it, I was one of those guys that said, hey, the division's not that good. They'll probably find a way to go 10-6, 9-7, and win the division. And now a lot of people are jumping off the Chip ship, and deservingly so, with the way that this team has performed over the last 3 weeks and the lack of effort from his players and the way he's been out-coached in these last 3 games. The USC job was filled today, but do you think Chip Kelly is going to be the next the head football coach for this team next year, Ray?
Well, I think it's more likely that he's going to be the head coach than he will be head coach and general manager. I think that one thing we've learned about Jeffrey Lurie in his time as the owner, he's not a guy with a real quick trigger. He rode with Andy Reid for 14 years and probably 2 years longer than he should have. And he probably stuck with Ray Rhodes maybe a year longer than he should have. But those guys had success. Ray Rhodes actually had a fair amount of success, and Andy had a lot of success. Chip to this point made the playoffs 1 year, but still hasn't won a postseason game. But I still get the feeling, unless things have changed dramatically in the last few weeks, that Jeffrey Lurie is committed to Chip. I'm sure he's disappointed and maybe to some degree disillusioned by what's happened. But has he gotten to the point now where he feels like, no, I have to get rid of this guy and start over? I think he'd be very reluctant to do that. However, I could see a scenario in which he comes to Chip at the end of the year and he says, listen, Chip, I like you. I think you're a good coach. I want to keep you as the coach, but I got to bring somebody else in now to take care of the personnel because, we gave that to you last year. And to be honest with you, I look at what's happened and it hasn't been good. So I think we need another voice and another set of eyes in there helping to pick the players. And by what you stay as coach, I could see that happening. The question would be then at that point, is Chip willing to work under those conditions? If you go to him and say, we want to keep you as coach, but we're bringing somebody else in to pick your players, Chip fought hard for all this power. If somebody goes in and tries to take that away, Chip could possibly say that's a deal breaker. If that's what you want to do, then I'm out of here. Also possible. But I think that, in all honesty, I think it's probably the right thing to do. If I were the Eagles, I don't think that I would want to go another off season and give Chip all the power to make all the personnel decisions, because you saw in this off season, most of them, I think, have backfired in a major way.
And that's an interesting point if Lurie does go out there and do that, because like you were saying, Chip really wanted that GM title, and there's a reason why he's now the GM. And you take a look at it and you like to think to yourself, hey, Chip's in really he's in a win-win situation. Either this is going to work out or it's not, and if not, he'll just go back to college. And I would have to imagine, Ray, if Lurie came to him and said, hey, I want you to just be the head coach and no longer the GM, you have to imagine he goes back to college and maybe takes the LSU job or one of the other big jobs that are going to open up in college football.
Yeah, well, maybe. Although LSU has indicated that they're staying with Les Miles. So, a couple of the jobs that everybody was pointing to is, these are big jobs that are going to be open. And SC was number one, and LSU was way up there. It looks like they're not going to be. Looks like SC has been filled. LSU has been. They're staying on with Les Miles. Everybody talked about Texas, but last time I looked, Charlie Strong was still there. So I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be that. Well, are there other colleges out there that would be interested in Chip? I definitely think so, because of his history of success, and I think he could be I think he could go back to college and be successful right away. It's clear that his way of doing things. He's obviously a very good recruiter, and his style of football definitely works in college. I can see where colleges would be interested in him even after this bad year in Philadelphia. The question would be, is it a program of sufficient stature and visibility that it would interest him?
Last one before we let you run, Ray. Brady and the Pats coming off a loss last night. Some questionable calls on the field. We don't know the status of Rob Gronkowski. They think he'll be okay. Still going over some further testing this morning. Over under 45 points Brady hangs on the Eagles this week.
Well, given the fact that his current crop of receivers are – this is a team where actually with that receiver core they've got now, especially if they now lose Gronkowski, this is probably the only team in the NFL where you could say that Riley Cooper and Miles Austin would be an upgrade. might be the only team in the league where you'd be happy to get Riley Cooper and Miles Austin.
And Brady would make him look pretty darn good.
That's what I'm saying. You put the two of them in Patriot jerseys on Sunday that probably look like Biletnikoff and Branch. But as much respect as I have for Brady, and it is immense, I have to think with what he's working with right now on the offense, and lack of receivers, lack of runners, and a beat up offensive line, I would probably say I expect New England to win the game, but the point total may be a little lower than people would expect.
Ray, you're the best. I know you'll be here on Temple on Friday, I think it is, talking about the Eagles Encyclopedia. So make sure people come out and support Ray Didinger for that. We always appreciate you coming on and give us a few minutes.
Always my pleasure, Zach. Take care.